Well, I want to be respectful of your all's time, so I will go ahead and pass it over to Adriana to kick us off with some announcements.
All right, thank you. So welcome to our session today. Just wanted to remind you where we are in the modules right now. So module 7 today, after next week, we'll have our last interview on August 5th. And then we'll talk about local engagement. And then the last two will be competition. And then we'll talk about the pitch practice. We'll have a couple of opportunities for that before the final session. And then office hours started today. So if you're interested in coming, I will be here an hour before the session for those on the dates on the syllabus. Next slide. Okay, so today we will talk about power mapping and one-pagers, talk a little bit more about messaging. We'll have some breakouts to start thinking about the power mapping. And in the syllabus, we have links to examples of power mapping and one-pagers and other readings. So review those as you're working on these assignments. After today, you'll submit a rough draft of the power mapping plan, your second version of the one-pager, and the elevator pitch, again, trying to prepare for the final sessions as we're still on the messaging side of things today. And in later this month, we'll have a pitch practice session. So as you think about, again, your second version of the elevator pitch, we'll give you a chance to practice your pitches on July 22nd. So this is extra. If you're not available, that's fine, but it's will be useful. We'll be there to provide feedback for an hour and a half, and then we'll select finalists from there, which will be August 19th. So we'll have about an hour for that to prepare you again for the final competition on August 26th. And more of that is in the syllabus as well. Next slide. Okay, and then we've been getting some questions about the timing of the homework schedule. So we realize it's a lot of homework, but also we're trying to keep this organized for ourselves. So this is the schedule that we have currently when it comes to due dates for you, reviewers that are external are in blue, internal, we're grading those, the ones in black, and then the limitations will be that the reviewers will have specific deadlines to return the assignment. So do your best to submit it by then. Otherwise, for a late assignment, we can grade them ourselves, but we'd prefer that they do that because we have other experts to do this who know those topics. So if possible, try to stick to these dates, and we'll send out the slides as well so you can review after. You have anything else? I think that's all I have. So I think Anna will introduce our speakers for today.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I wanted to introduce our speaker for today. We have Melissa Varga, who is the Science Network Senior Manager at the Union of Concerned Scientists. And we also have Tosin, who's not present today, but she will be helping with grading some of the assignments. The Union of Concerned Scientists is a national nonprofit organization who use science to address global problems and improve people's lives. They are also one of the sponsors for this course, and they have graciously donated to our competition at the end of the course, as well as offering their time and helping with grading some of the assignments. So if we can please give them a round of applause to thank them for their time. And I will provide the link for the Union of Concerned Scientists website in the chat, but I'm sure Melissa will go into more detail. So thank you, Melissa.
Melissa, I don't think we're able to hear you. No, nothing yet.
A bit of broad messaging, more broad messaging too. So I'll talk a little bit about different types of messaging, kind of using some of my experiences, which hopefully will help. And then one pagers, which I think will be actually flow well into Melissa's section. So next slide. So in all the different assignments we've been talking about is we've been trying to get you to sort of frame a specific message. And for the pitch, especially, it's important that you have a message about you and kind of where you're coming from. And so again, I'm going to use my example based on things that I've worked on and kind of how I would frame this in different settings. So if I had to give a sort of one-liner, it would be Adriana Bankston works on building a robust STEM workforce through research, training, policy, and advocacy, trying to use some keywords, which would include the scientific research, higher education, training and STEM workforce, graduate students and postdocs, and advocating for policy change. So if you want to just get sort of a nutshell of my interests and the things I care about, these would be the keywords for that. So something to consider as you're working on the assignments and the messaging. So next slide. So when I started, and this is actually relevant, sorry, can you go back one? To, no, the other way. Right there, thank you. So a lot of the different things I've worked on have different audiences. And so this is the first one of the things I worked on that relates to institutions. So it has to do with advocating for postdoc salaries through a nonprofit called Future Research. The idea was that we gather data on postdoc salaries and try to push universities to change and increase salaries. We published another paper on what postdocs were getting paid based on different titles, which is really fascinating. Anyway, putting that aside, this is a good example of how data-driven work can help with advocacy, and I'm happy to share the links to the papers as well. But also the idea to keep in mind here that we were addressing this to institutions to try to make change for postdocs. So next slide. And then you can see this slide, and I can share the slides out too. This is one sort of a one-pager example to talk about what future research is, what we're interested in, what we've achieved to date, and so on. And it's a good example when you're thinking about sort of background for an institution or nonprofit, what kinds of things you might be able to sell. We actually use this for fundraising too. So it might give you some ideas of how to frame some things around the organization that you are working for, the institution, or whoever you want to represent in your one-pagers. The next slide. Okay, the next example is Society for Neuroscience, which again, I did a fellowship here. Happy to talk more about this, but the idea is that it was very focused on neuroscience research. We submitted testimony that the SFN president would write, which we're not working on testimonies here, but it's also another way to conceptualize an idea specific to neuroscience research. So if you're interested in specific areas of research policy, this is something that might help you to actually frame some of the arguments, because testimonies are another way to do this. And so I thought it would be useful just to share that example. So next slide. Capitol Hill Days. So let me just see if I missed something. Oh no, that's the next slide. Okay. I can share this link too, because it explains really nicely how to sell this your message that you have in a Hill Day, influencing policy through advocacy. So we don't have to play it right now, but it's a good way to again think about a specific area and how you would advocate for that issue. Next slide. And then here's the testimony that we had for the Commerce, Justice, Science related agencies in the House Appropriations Committee to support National Science Foundation funding. So again, you don't have to read this whole thing, but a lot of your pitches have to do with funding of research. Again, it's a good resource to think about how do we advocate for funding for a specific area? How do we write that kind of thing? How do we write this sort of thing in a one-pager, which we'll talk about, but again, some specific language and numbers, and it frames really nicely. Again, this would be from the SFN president and how they would advocate for what they're doing in a society. So another good example and resource to sort of frame your argument. Next slide. And then wanted to emphasize some of my work with the University of California. So again, this is actually relevant for if you're thinking about university research. We did advocacy with Congress and other entities. Again, it was very research focused, and including research in education, agriculture, and so on. So I think this is a helpful experience as well to discuss how we were looking specifically at legislators in California. So go to the next slide. And these are some of the materials that we had. Another sort of one-pager, and actually this is helpful as you think about pitching to a specific legislator. So we had these fact sheets about who they were, what they're interested in, which I would encourage you to do this sort of research for your legislator too, how it's relating to your organization. So this was specifically how Young Kim, for example, her interest related to the UC, to the interest of UC in education and health, research, her legislative priorities, committees, and leadership. So I think this is really helpful for just background that you can do for your legislator that you're pitching to. We also had meetings. So we won't do this in real time, but emphasizing that if you were actually meeting with them to discuss specific bills, this is a good template for that in terms of who they are, what they supported, some bills they supported, and so on. So again, thinking back more about the legislator's background. Next slide. And then wanted to share a couple of examples before I go to the one-pager. So this was how Young Kim's priorities were related to the California district, so District 40, what kinds of things that relate to the UC were in her district. And so this is, again, things that you might want to advocate for, again, making that connection of what is in your legislator's district that is relevant to your issue or your organization that you're representing. That's the sort of research that would be helpful to do. Next slide. And this was a more detailed fact sheet of, because the UC obviously is, has a lot of different types of students and employees. So this is not the kind of thing that you probably would find readily, but, and also actually has funding by agencies. How much funding does the UC get from different agencies for that particular year? Again, giving you some more ideas about things to do research on and think about, you know, if I'm representing a specific organization, what do they care about? What do those numbers look like in the state of the district of the representative that I'm pitching to? That's the sort of what that would look like because they react well to numbers. Okay, next slide. Okay, so with all that said, hopefully that kind of frames some of these considerations to think about. So one-pager specifically, deliver your message efficiently, facilitating a conversation with health staffers. So the idea is this is something you can leave with them after you have a meeting. The one-pager would include different sections, and I'll show you one example. And again, more links in the syllabus. Talk about the organization that you represent, what problem you want help on, what your solution is, what your legislator can do to help. Include a list of supporters. That's helpful if you have a bill. They often ask who else supported that bill, and it would be helpful to know, especially if they're happen to be on the same committees or they know each other oftentimes. And then your contact to be able to come back to you, and you can be a resource for them, and you can then have your phone number, email, things like that. As in everything we've talked about, try to put your bottom line up front and have an ask that is clear. So I sort of showed you a few things like how much funding do we want for certain things. The more specific, the better. And things to consider, obviously the topic as it relates to your legislator, the audience, who is this? Is it a senator? Is it a member of the House? Again, is there anything related to your university or your organization and or your topic that would relate to their interests? Background of the legislator, the timing is important. So when it comes to, and this is kind of broader question, but how you would time specific asks during particular time points in Congress, if it's a specific bill, kind of where that is. If you're asking for funding, where is that in the timing of appropriations and so on. And then your position and argument, which will depend on what your topic is on and where you want to take that. Next slide. So in a very high level sense, your recommendations will have, again, try to be articulate, try to be brief, one sentence. The problem you're trying to address, the scale and the impact. Again, this all comes back to some of the things I've showed you related to how does it impact my district or my state, my constituents. Supporting your recommendations with evidence. So I brought this up before, some of the data that I showed you, trying to have some data is helpful. And then the ask, again, specific, clear, trackable, include any information that will help them make it easier to understand what you want them to do, essentially. What's the bill name and number? What's the committee? How much money you're asking for, et cetera. And then describing the organization you're representing. So you can use your institution or your nonprofit. Oftentimes, you would go to the Hill with the specific, representing a particular organization. And again, include your contact. And next slide. So here's an example that I like to use that's very straightforward. It's parents for lunch representing 500 local families. Okay, so it's making it sort of personal, has a picture of depicting really clearly what they're asking for, what the topic is. Recommendation, keep our kids fed, vote yes on the lunch school amendment. So it's very targeted. Which bill is it? What should they do? Vote yes, and then you have some data backing that up. How many students rely on this program, how this is benefiting students that eat lunch in terms of behavior and other things. And then 80% of students who rely on programs won't be able to eat lunch without it. So what is the consequence of removing this, right? Why is it important? Very clear data. It's not overloaded with graphs, right? Could probably have even had fewer graphs, but it's making the point of why we care about this and what happens if you take it away. The ask, or again, sort of why do we care? School lunch is the only option. And then it goes into more details about why this is important. This is important for the youth of our future, et cetera. And we'll read all of that. And then you can see the contact in the bottom. So really simple. It tells you who this is representing, what they're asking for, what they're asking the legislator to do, why is it important, and why do we care, sort of in a broader sense. So hopefully that's helpful. And then I think I have one more slide. Yeah, this is the last slide. So these are a couple of background materials that explain a bit more about how one-pagers look like, what their structure can be. These are from the syllabus too, but one's from AGU, the other one is from another Real Life Foundation, showing again the structure very clearly and giving some more guidelines. So hopefully that's helpful. Obviously, we're here if you need help, and yeah, hope to provide a helpful background, just bare bones of this, and please do look at the resources in the syllabus. So that's it for me.
Right, thank you, Adriana. Let's see if we can get Melissa back up. Let's see. She was here a moment ago. I think she might have dropped off again.
Hi, it's Melissa.
Oh,
Can you all hear me on the phone?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I am so sorry. My power is out. My data on my phone is not consistent, so this is going to be an audio experience for you all today. I apologize. So we're just going to try to roll with it. Lauren, are you able to share her slides?
Yep, your slides are already showing up and running.
Thank you. Okay, well, bear with me since I can't see any slides. I can't see all of you, but again, I am excited to be here. I'm Melissa Varga. I've been with UCS for just over 10 years and have been working with Adriana and other folks at UC Irvine for several years on how to engage in policy advocacy as a scientist or early career scientist or grad student. So this is one of the favorite topics that I get to teach. So even though I'm here in a limited capacity, I'm still excited to be here with you all today. And I just wanted to run through some learning objectives quickly. So next slide. My hope is that after this module, you'll be able to define power mapping and describe how to use this tool to craft an effective ask, which Adriana also just talked about, which is great. Understand how power mapping fits into broader policy advocacy efforts, and then hopefully sharpen your elevator pitch to make it more effective for your target audience, which again, you also heard a little bit about from Adriana, which is fantastic. Next slide. And before we dive into what power mapping is and how to go about it, I wanted to share a little bit about UCS's approach to organizing scientists to give you a little bit of context on why power mapping is such an important part of science advocacy. So at the Union of Concerned Scientists, our approach to science advocacy is to lead with the science. We produce technical analyses, which we leverage to help inform really important policy issues and decisions. However, we know that data and research don't speak for themselves. People have to give a voice to the science, and especially within the political arena where decisions are often predicated on the distribution of power, so who holds power, who or what they're influenced by. You know, this lens of power distribution is really foundational to how we approach advocacy and advocacy in general. So we don't stop with the technical analyses and research. Our policy and lobbying staff take that data and research our scientists produce and turn them into policy recommendations that we try to implement. They work with organizers and outreach staff like myself who engage members of the scientific community like you to advocate for these policy solutions and to influence the decision makers and institutions that need to implement them. But before we can even get to that stage of advocating for specific policies, we have to know who can make the change that we're seeking and who and what will persuade them to make that change. And that's exactly where power mapping comes in. It's an exercise that we use in all of our campaigns at the Union of Concerned Scientists to help us identify our targets and the key decision makers and determine the best possible approach so we can influence them. It also allows us to understand our own power and how it fits into the landscape and how we can leverage that power and our relationships and expertise to influence decision makers. So as we go through this training, I want you all to think about the power that you have as well, power as members of different organizations and institutions like UC Irvine and GPS STEM, as well as the power that you hold as a member of the scientific community. Each of you have the power to advocate for equitable science-based policies. And I hope that power mapping can be a useful tool for you to help figure out the most strategic paths to direct that power. Next slide. So just to make sure we're on the same page, I wanted to give you a brief overview of power mapping. And if you read any of the pre-readings, this is probably just a refresher. But power mapping is a tool to help you identify the avenues and relationships that will help you influence the decision maker that you're targeting. Again, we use power mapping at UCS all the time to help us decide on the most strategic actions that we can take, ensure our messages and approaches are resonant, and to build awareness and influence on the issues that we're working on. And power mapping always starts with 3 questions. You can go ahead and hit the next button 3 times so they all pop up. So first, what needs to change first? This is your goal, and it has to be concrete and measurable. You need to be able to answer the question, did this change happen or not? Second, where is that change made? So I think in this case, we're normally going to be talking about legislation, but it could also be through strengthening or changing regulatory policies, could be through organizational policy, budgetary changes, things like that. And finally, who can make that change happen? So this one person is going to be your target. And usually there are multiple possible decision makers who could be your target, but it's really important to just pick one because you can only focus on researching and crafting your message to make it as specific and effective as possible for one person at a time. And I also want to mention that even though I am using the word target and that can feel confrontational or divisive, it really isn't meant to be. It doesn't have to be. I've used power mapping within my organization, and it was all about relationship building and helping people understand how the plan that I was proposing would actually benefit their work. It was a very positive experience. We use power mapping to identify and influence even friendly legislators that we're working with to help understand, how we can get them to maybe take the next step and co-sponsor a bill or, be a more vocal advocate of some of the issues that we're working on. So if you prefer to use the phrase key decision maker instead of target, that totally works too. Next slide. So once you have a key decision maker in mind, or a key target, you need to do a little background research on what might help move them to craft your pitch and approach. And there's a lot of overlap here between power mapping and what Adriana was talking about in putting together a one-pager. So it's good to see how all of this fits together. So here are 5 questions to get you started on power mapping. First, exactly the same as the one pager, what is their track record on this issue? What have they said on this issue before? Have they spoken publicly about it? Do they have information about this issue on their website? Have they voted on similar issues? Second, what do they stand to win by saying yes or stand to lose by saying no? sorry, if you want to advance to all 5 questions, that's fine. So for the second question, keep in mind that self-interest is a real motivator. So, being able to stay in office, maintain power, maintain a good reputation with their constituents are all things that could influence them in this regard. Third question is, who can directly influence them? So who are their mentors, senior colleagues who helped them get where they are today? Do they have aspirations for a higher office or another role, and who can help them get there? Fourth, beyond just who influences them, whose opinion do they really care about having in their corner? And is there a way that you can show that this group is impacted or supports your efforts? So think of groups like labor unions, veterans, small business owners, things like that. And finally, what has prevented them from taking action so far? Why haven't they acted? Next slide. All right, so the final piece I want to talk through today that you can think about as you're crafting your pitch is timing. So when would your target be most likely to listen? And things to consider in this regard are, do they have to make a decision on this issue by a given time? So if it's related to appropriations or budget, there's a clear timeline for that. What else is preoccupying their time right now? If you are thinking about focusing on a member of the House of Representatives, they're thinking about re-election. So now may not be the ideal time to talk with them unless this is already a priority issue for them. If you are focusing on a member of Congress, are they in recess? That could be a pro or a con, depending on if they're more accessible or less accessible during recess. Is there another time when this issue would have peak energy, like around key anniversaries or landmark events or things like that? Another thing I'll offer is that it may take multiple touch points to build a relationship and influence your target, especially if your ask is going to be tied up in a pretty substantial piece of legislation. So sometimes the best time to start is just right now, recognizing that you may need to have different iterations of your pitch, may need to have different meetings with different staffers and the decision makers themselves. So consider your elevator pitch the first part of a longer term effort to build a relationship with the decision maker that you're trying to influence. All right, so I wanted to share a quick case study to put this into context. Next slide. And this is based on actual legislation and bills that UCS is working on. Although take this with a grain of salt, this is a bit abbreviated for today's class. So for context, in 2023, the Michigan State Legislature passed a series of energy bills with partners like Vote Solar and the Michigan Environmental Justice Coalition to strengthen the bills as much as possible. And so we did make some progress on that front, but there were issues that didn't align with where we were hoping the bills would go. Most importantly, the bills fell short of addressing some of our justice and equity priorities, especially around energy affordability, utility accountability, and pushing for stronger renewable energy goals. So we're collaborating with our partners to push for several important priority bills this summer and fall to try to address the shortfalls from last year. And the bills have been introduced by Representative Helena Scott. She's a representative from Michigan District 7. She's the chair of the House Energy, Communications, and Technology Committee. But these bills lack the specifics that are needed and the enforcement measures that are needed to make sure that they actually make a difference for the people who need them to most. So to go back to our fundamental power mapping questions, you can, well, okay, I guess you can pull up the first question. What needs to change first? answer is we want to strengthen the language in the clean energy bills that have already been introduced. So these are House Bills 5216 through 5222. The second question you can pull up on the slide. So where is that change made? As I said, these very specific House bills. And the other piece that we're considering here is this legislation is coming out of the House Energy, Communications, and Technology Committee. So there are other ways we could strengthen the language, but we're going to focus on the committee as where that change can be made. And the final question, who can make that change happen? And I gave this away. There's more than one person who can make that change, but you need to pick one person to focus your research and messaging on. So we've chosen Representative Helena Scott, who's the chair of that committee who introduced these bills. All right, so if you want to pull up the slide with the picture of Representative Scott, there's a lot you can learn just from a quick skim of Representative Scott's website. So if I was going to put together an elevator pitch or a one-pager to start crafting my approach to reach out to her, this is the first place I would go, is the homepage of her website. And at the top, I'm not sure how legible that is, but she says, "I'm committed to our community, to social justice, and to ensuring a bright Michigan for all residents." So one of her top priorities is social justice. We know we're on the right track by partnering with environmental justice organizations and making sure that that's a key part of our messaging and how we interact with her. If you pull up the next image, this is from another page on her website, and there is a ton of useful information here. She lists mentors, former roles in committees that she's held, other current roles that may be worth looking into to see how they're affected by the proposed bills. So for example, she's also the vice chair of the Detroit caucus. And I can imagine that because these bills are prioritizing more accessible and affordable clean energy, that there's a lot we could pull in to emphasize how these bills would impact not just her specific district, but the broader Detroit area as well. And finally, the final image, when you Google her, you'll see that she is running for re-election, and the primary is August 6th. So that means that right now she's going to be probably almost entirely focused on the primary, probably not so much legislation, especially because the Michigan State House is on recess until after the primary. So that's absolutely going to impact our timing and framing about how and when we reach out to her. You can absolutely still reach out to candidates when they are running for office and engage them as a candidate rather than as a sitting elected official. But you probably want to have a slightly different approach to it. You may want to engage them in public events, campaign events. And we have a UCS webinar coming up in a couple weeks that will talk about that. So I'll highlight that at the end. So hopefully that was a useful case study of how to start some of the preliminary research and then how to connect that with sort of that strategic communications angle and connect it to your messaging. And before we head into breakout groups, I might ask my fellow UCI folks and Adriana if they could help facilitate some Q&A.
Yeah, of course. I think one question has come in, and it was saying, by one person, could it be an entity or a committee, e.g. Committee of Foreign Affairs, or do we pick one person specifically?
I would strongly suggest just picking one person. You may need to do a little bit of research on multiple people to figure out who that right person is. But the goal here is really to craft a message that is specific to the motivations and experiences and track record of the one target. So ideally, you will just have one person that you're focused on.
They say, got it. Thank you for the response to that. I don't see any other questions. I'll give it a moment to see if anyone else has any questions that they want to add to the chat, or you can unmute yourself or raise your hand and ask Melissa directly. So we'll give it a moment for you to get those in. I don't see anything else coming in, so we could maybe go to the, oh, here's one that came in. So this is from one of our participants. If the representative from your district is not your target audience, should you look for another representative in your state who are?
That's a good question. It probably depends on it depends on a lot of things. The reason that we at UCS often try to encourage to their specific elected officials who represent them is you have a very powerful relationship with them just by being their constituent. I would say that expands a little bit to other elected officials in your state or maybe nearby region even. But if there is a very specific issue where there's one champion in the legislature or in Congress who you feel like you can build a relationship with, sometimes that does make the most sense, especially if you know that your representative is not interested in that issue. So generally focusing on your own representatives, your own elected officials makes sense, but there are some times where it may make sense to look elsewhere.
Okay, great. Thank you. That makes sense. We do have one question. It's a little, he says this super specific, but how do you recommend advocating, or power mapping for areas like Puerto Rico or U.S. Virgin Islands who lack representatives with voting power?
This is such a good question. And as a resident of the District of Columbia, I feel you. It is a real challenge. I would say you could still look into reaching out to your delegate. They do have, some rights. They are in DC, so they may be able to, if they can't, actually introduce legislation or vote on legislation, they may be able to work their connections to get progress made on the policy issue that you're raising with them. You could also look at a different level of government, state or local, to see if that's a better fit for what you're asking for.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. I don't think I see any other questions coming in. Do you want to explain the breakout rooms for everyone? I'll put up the slides too.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to give you all time to work through this a little bit. I know that you have been thinking about engaging decision makers in policy. So hopefully you've already thought about some of these power mapping questions, but if not, this gives you a chance to dig a little deeper and maybe talk through some of the challenges or potential barriers that you're running into with your classmates. So I suggest breaking into groups and taking the first 5 minutes just to do individual work on some of those questions for researching decision makers. I think the link to that was included in the pre-reading, but maybe someone will also be able to reshare it in the chat. And then take 10 minutes to discuss together, what you're seeing. If any of the research that you've done suggests, maybe you need to change your decision maker, hopefully not. or has given you any insights on how you're going to use that to frame your messaging. And I outlined the 5 things in summary that you're looking for, which is going to tie directly into your homework. So what's the topic that you're focusing on? Who is your target? What are your target's motivations and top issues? What is going to be your angle or approach? So how are you going to connect the research you've done to the messaging you're crafting? And if you have any thoughts on the best time to introduce that.
Okay, great. Well, breakout rooms are ready, so we will open up the breakout rooms so that you know which topic you are going to be doing for this practice one. And then we will give you a 5-minute kind of alert and through the broadcast that 5 minutes has been up, and to transition to the 10-minute discussion with your breakout rooms to address these 5 areas. All right, so we'll go ahead and open those rooms and let us know if you have any questions. All right, Melissa, looks like everybody has rejoined the main room.
Awesome. Welcome back, folks. I would love to hear a report out or a question that you surfaced in your breakout group. Doesn't have to be lengthy, but would love for someone from each group to share a little bit about what you explored during your power mapping exercise. So does someone want to go first?
I guess I'll go ahead if that's all right. Something that my group was, I think, a little bit confused on was what power mapping actually looks like in the context, I guess, of a one-pager, because the reading that we got, prior reading, is kind of more like a, I don't know, like a graphical abstract or something, or some sort of like plot that tells you like who falls in what domain of like power versus impact, and like how much they can help move your, policy forward. And so should we, is a power mapping tool something you do prior to deciding who your one pager is for? Yeah, I think that would be helpful to get clarification on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to respond, but Adriana would also love to hear your thoughts. I think it could go both ways. I think we at UCS, we do power mapping as a pretty early stage piece of the research to help us figure out who that person is that we're writing a one-pager about, but also to flesh out, once we have a sense of it, what else we need in terms of power and influence and expertise to try to influence them. So I think you can think about power mapping coming in at different stages. I do think it's helpful to help you choose. Power mapping is a helpful tool to help you choose the right decision maker, but I could see it being useful at multiple different stages as you're thinking about communicating policy. Adriana, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I was sort of thinking of it this way, that it would help you kind of crystallize your message, who you want to direct it to, and then the one pager is more about what the ask is. And once you already know who that is, it's kind of a continuation of the power mapping, or they work together. Yeah.
And then just to clarify, we don't have, oh yeah, we submit the power mapping as well, correct?
Yeah, there is a power mapping homework exercise, and it's basically the same questions that you all started talking through today in the breakout rooms.
Yeah, so today was like a case study, or like an example where you guys got to go through one of an assigned topic that we gave you for your breakout room, but you'll submit your power mapping based off your own interest and doing your own work.
I thought I would chime in for our group.
Yeah.
That's okay. So I think what we found is what we really found during our time was how time consuming, it really is, like taking in all the info. Because, just deciding like what exact bill we wanted to target or what topic we wanted to investigate, that was in itself um, quite a lot of time. And then we had to think about who do we want to target with it. And I think it makes you appreciate like how much time you have to put in to do it correctly. So I think that helped us a lot.
Yeah. That was not my intention, was to show you, wow, this takes so much time. But yeah, it's true.
Not in a bad way. But...
not enough time to do a full power map.
I can chime in for my group as well. We discussed a little bit more the logistics of if you are discussing an issue that doesn't necessarily have a bill, how do you find allies based on bills that have already gone through or been introduced in the House? And how do you navigate that even if you're not necessarily in the same district as those who have sponsored those bills?
That's such a great point. And I didn't really get into how to think about contacting, friendly organizations or allies or coalitions who are outside of, elected office who may be working on those issues. But that's another great place to start. Organizations like UCS, we have paid staff who are doing this work. So we can probably tell you much sooner than you all can figure out on your own sort of what the policy opportunities are coming up and what the bills are that have been introduced. So that's another avenue that you could consider, is reaching out to a local nonprofit or a relevant nonprofit who's working on a similar topic. Was there a final breakout room?
I was in the STEM ed one, and I think we misunderstood. So I was working on like what I was supposed to like thinking of, and so I did a lot of research of looking at just like what is being introduced right now, and something I'm interested in is rural STEM education. And so there was one in 2021, but I'm trying to find a more recent one, and I know CHIPS Act was up there too, so trying to find one that might be going through there.
No, that's still a great use of time. So I'm glad you got to start digging into exploring some of the relevant legislation. Was that the final group?
Rune, I saw you come off mute. I wasn't sure if you were.
Oh, I was in. I had a different question. I didn't know if we were open for like general questions.
Yeah, Yeah, we can take a question or two before we wrap.
Yeah. So, I see a picture in the chat as well, and that really how I have personally seen this assignment to go, like a power mapping as a Venn diagram or pictures. Okay, this is the person of interest. What did they presented in the House before? What their interests are, or is it a formal page of, okay, this is what we're proposing, like a one pager?
Yeah, for this homework assignment, I really am just interested in the questions of who is your target, what are their motivations, and sort of like how are you shaping what you found through research to craft an effective pitch for that specific target or key decision maker. I feel like the graphic or the graphs and other visual representations come in once you've done a little bit deeper research on sort of allies and the broader landscape. And if that's something that you have energy for, happy to take a look at that. But that is sort of like the next step beyond just target and what moves them. So for this exercise, really just looking for answers to some of those key questions. And then actually, Adriana, are they also meant to submit a one-pager?
Yes, we're doing that as well. So that has
Great.
more of a structure. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can use the same research from power mapping to structure your one-pager, which will be a little bit more formal.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Any other quick questions? Apologies for not being able to see the chat. I am going to join for office hours next week at 5 Eastern on Monday. So if you have questions that you don't feel comfortable asking now, you can either email me or I'll hop online next Monday, and I'm happy to chat through your power map if you want then. I wanted to share a few final opportunities to stay in touch or to take your science advocacy to the next level. If you are interested in exploring this further, I welcome you to join the Science Network at the Union of Concerned Scientists. It is free, and we will send you trainings and resources and action opportunities specifically for scientists on how to engage in different policy advocacy opportunities around legislation on things like climate and clean energy and sustainable agriculture and wide range of issues. You're of course welcome to find me on LinkedIn as well if you want to connect in that way. And then a couple of trainings that we have at UCS coming up. I mentioned bird dogging candidates as a way of bringing these issues in front of candidates in a public space. So we have a training on July 25th on how to make science a priority for candidates. I can make sure that you all get the link to these trainings afterwards since I'm not able to put them in the chat. Our training that's a little bit further out, but still very relevant, is on countering disinformation leading up to the election and how to avoid some of the common pitfalls around countering disinformation. So that's not until September, but we do also have other information on how scientists can counter disinformation on our website. And especially if you are interested in topics like climate change, you may want to check those out. Finally, one of the actions and one of the issues that we're working on right now is on battery recycling. I don't know if that sounds exciting to you, but it's a really big issue around climate and sustainability. And so we're looking for congressional co-sponsors on this battery recycling bill that's been introduced called the Critical Material Trace Act. And I can make sure you all have the link if you want to learn more about that. And you can write and urge your members of Congress to co-sponsor that piece of legislation. Otherwise, thank you all for your patience. I'm so sorry I wasn't able to see you and be more present with you today, but hopefully you were able to take away a few nuggets of information that you can apply to not just this homework assignment, but your broader approach to policy engagement and advocacy moving forward. So I'll hand it back to the UC Irvine folks.
Thank you, Melissa, for joining us and being adaptable with your situation with your power outage. We appreciate you adapting in the moment. I think that's it for us. I don't think we have any other announcements. Adriana had made them in the beginning. Let us know if you do have any other questions. We'll stick around for the next couple minutes, but otherwise, if we could all thank Melissa virtually, give her kudos. And yeah, I think that's all. And we'll send out an email recapping and giving something to you all by tomorrow. And we'll see you potentially next week, of course. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all. Take care.